on to the two final briefings of the semester. Uh, our next briefer is Griffin Smith, who will be briefing us on the Department of Defense Climate Resiliency and Readiness Act. And if you're ready, Griffin, take it away.
Thank you, Professor Cohen. Good morning. My name is Griffin Smith, and before I begin, I just wanted to relay my appreciation for my team, which is comprised of a group of intelligent, passionate environmentalists who choose to remain hopeful and optimistic in these times. I feel privileged for the opportunity to present our research on a bill that was introduced in the House of Representatives last May, H.R. 2759, Department of Defense Climate Resiliency and Readiness Act. This proposed legislation, which I will refer to as the DoD Climate Act, is an opportunity for the federal government to invest in both the military and the environment. The United Nations has declared climate change the defining problem of our time. We currently face a direct existential threat. In this presentation, I will review the objectives of the proposed legislation, and in the event that our elected representatives in Congress move past the denial of climate change, I will define the legislation's success. I hope to convey 3 points this morning. Climate change is currently threatening installations and operations of the DoD. Adaptations are currently available that will enhance the DoD's readiness, and that this proposed legislation will assist the DoD in mitigating its climate risks. The unfortunate reality is that climate change is currently threatening installations and operations of the DoD. Military installations at home and abroad are currently at risk. 3 of these images show the aftermath of extreme weather events fueled by our changing climate, and one of them reminds us of the looming threat posed to our coastal installations. The DoD Climate Act has 5 objectives which intend to enhance the readiness of our military. It's important to note here that the DoD Climate Act is crafted with national security in mind. This legislation does not apply to tactical aspects of the military. The focus of the DoD Climate Act is on non-operational sources, that is, the fixed installations and the enduring locations of the DoD. So we'll first begin by looking at the current climate threats to installations and operations of the DoD. The DoD understands the need to incorporate extreme weather and other effects of climate change into its planning and its risk management. Across the nation, installations report vulnerabilities from 2 or more factors of climate change. These assets of the DoD are affected by severe weather events ranging from storm surge, wildfires in California, high winds, and they may be affected by sea level rise in the future. In fact, there are 1,700 military installations that are at risk of sea level rise. Earth Institute scientist and climate activist James Hansen has watched his dire predictions for the planet come true. Since 1986, humans have increased atmospheric carbon dioxide by 45%, and our planet has warmed by about 2 degrees Fahrenheit. This recent trend of increasing atmospheric carbon dioxide can be best seen in the graph. Dr. Hansen noted that the consensus is clear. There is no natural factor that can account for this. Humans are the cause of global warming, and human activity has altered the composition of our global atmosphere. It certainly is difficult to think about a shift away from burning fossil fuels, and the period of transition will be very messy and uncertain. However, the decision to continue to burn fossil fuels will result in large-scale climate change this century and beyond. So let's discuss the current adaptations that are available that could enhance the DoD's readiness. For government action to be effective, the Department of Defense must be able to uniformly assess the risks of climate change at each installation. The DoD Climate Act requires the department to create a vulnerability and risk assessment tool. This tool will be consistent with the prevailing scientific consensus, and it will allow for a uniform quantitative assessment. We need to truly understand the extent of these climate threats. Previous vulnerability assessments were qualitative and were self-reported by individuals at these installations. There is no uniform measure that has currently been implemented. The DoD Climate Act directs Mark Esper, the Secretary of the Department, to use this tool to rank military installations from most to least vulnerable. The goal here is to increase the readiness of our military and to ensure continued operational viability. Today, the DoD remains largely dependent on a commercial power grid. This power grid is vulnerable to disruption from extreme weather, aging infrastructure, and direct attack. By installing microgrids, like the one seen here at Lakeland Air Force Base, the Department of Defense pursues energy security and energy resilience. The solutions set forth in this proposed legislation will assist the DoD in mitigating its climate risks. To mitigate its risks, the DoD must simply reduce its carbon footprint. The DoD must first pledge energy efficiency, and then it must measure its progress towards reducing its overall energy use. By the end of this decade, the DoD must strive to produce energy locally, to produce as much renewable energy as is consumed. Net zero energy will be achieved through the allocation of research dollars and the development of electric grid technology and the implementation of renewable energy projects at installations. In 2010, the Army's Net Zero Initiative launched 17 pilot installations that were meant to model the sustainable path forward, a path towards operational energy security. One of these net zero sites is on the Marshall Islands, at an installation that is only 10 feet above sea level. What excites our group most about our research is the purchasing power of the Department of Defense and the money that flows to our military and to its contractors. What if the DoD were to pivot and pivot towards renewable, pivot on the climate? Our country has a long history of energy innovation that has been spurred from investments in the name of military necessity. The Department of Defense investment in advanced technology is a force multiplier that will continue to spur energy innovation. The truth is that energy will always be vital for our national security, and that much of the innovation potential lies with zero and low zero carbon sources. Last year, it was estimated that the department invested $1.6 billion in energy research, development, testing, and evaluation. The Climate Act calls for there to be increased research dollars allocated to the development of microgrids and electric grid technology. Now I thought we could take a look at one installation that is part of the Army's Net Zero Initiative. In 2011, a hybrid microgrid was installed at Fort Carson in Colorado. So it's a hybrid microgrid project. So it's not net zero yet, but it's progress nonetheless. This system contains 1 megawatt solar PV array, 3 generators, and a 4.5 megawatt battery storage system. This hybrid microgrid system has increased energy efficiency at this installation and provides an adequate power supply. Looking ahead, this system hopes to become more renewable by adding wind, heat pumps, and biofuels to the hybrid grid. The DoD must continue to make progress like this and take prudent steps to reduce its carbon footprint. So the DoD Climate Act will be successful if the department is able to demonstrate increased readiness to respond to climate threats and also 100% net zero energy by 2030. After pledging to increase its energy efficiency, the DoD must measure its progress in reducing carbon dioxide emissions at each installation. Our research has found that the technology is available. The transition to net zero energy is feasible. The Department of Defense accounts for 70% of the federal government's annual energy consumption. Imagine the change that would occur if the DoD were to pivot on the climate. What if the DoD were to apply its full purchasing power towards the US renewable energy market? With this presentation, I hope to have highlighted our group's research and the importance of investments that enhance our military. Our research suggests that these investments are in the interest of the nation. We remain optimistic and hopeful that the DoD, by pivoting on the climate and pivoting towards renewable, will reduce the risks that it's aiming to build resilience against. We thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions that you have.
Very good job. Thank you. Do we have any questions for our briefer?
You guys can raise your hand or type them in the chat box. Oh, we got a question. Rachel has a question.
Hey. Thank you, Rachel.
Hi, Griffin. Great presentation. I just had a quick question because you said that the DoD accounts for 70% of federal government energy consumption, and this bill is specifically focused on non-operational sources. So what's the breakdown of how much is used for non-operational versus operational sources?
That's a great question. I don't have the exact percentage here, but we do know that it is a very, very, very large number of megawatts. British thermal units is that they measure it in, but I don't have the exact number for you. I remember during our research, we were blown away by the DoD's energy, yes, I'm sorry I don't have the exact number for you, but what I can tell you is that the DoD's energy footprint is larger than 2 individual countries. And then within that, most of its energy consumption is for fuel and for providing electricity for its buildings. And because this bill focuses on non-operational installations, which are its buildings, it is a very large amount of energy.
Great. We received 2 more questions. One is from an attendee. They ask, does this bill include any measures to build resilience in DoD facilities that are at risk of being impacted by climate change, even with emissions reductions?
Yes. So the whole idea here is that the military will fortify its installations from climate threats all over the country, and then also take steps to reduce the climate threats. So they are going to fortify its installations while also taking steps to reduce its footprint so that the climate threats become less severe.
Okay. Why don't we take one final question?
Great. Last question from Liz. She says, great presentation. To what extent does the DoD already implement renewable energy and microgrids?
So I showed one example. We talked a little bit about one example, but the Army has a net zero initiative project that is currently across the nation. And the DoD is making great progress here. I think that what our call is that we should build on the progress that's already been made and continue to implement more of these projects. So there is a documented history here of successful DoD renewable energy projects. And because the military has the ability to invest in these projects, this legislation is calling for there to be more implementation of renewable energy, increased research and development, so that we can, harness the military's power towards renewable.
Okay, Griffin, thank you very much. Very nice job. And